see how that stands. So I see the majority of people in this session are 57% are in research support, followed by around 13% who are researchers. I see an other category, then I see 8% policymakers, 8% business industry, and then the last percentage is a research funder. So most people are either in research support or doing research directly themselves. Thank you, and I think we can go on also. You can move on to the following Slido poll question and we let the audience fill that in. So moving on to our speakers, first question I have for our speakers is, how can universities help researchers be intersectorally mobile and transition to research careers outside of academia? And I'll repeat that. So how can universities help researchers be intersectorally mobile and transition to research careers outside of academia? And I'd like to pass the floor to Gordon.
Thank you, Gareth. Well, the question asks about universities, and universities are, I suppose, not so often in the driving seat with regards to intersectoral mobility, but they certainly can assist and cooperate. And I suppose when people think about intersectoral mobility, they think mostly about moving from research into, or academia into industry. And to me, there's two ways to fund movement to industry. One is, I suppose, having written into funding calls that there's placements in industry for a certain amount of time. And of course, these placements will be about between 2 to 3 to 4 months. The second, more proactive move or sort of opportunity so that researchers could think about career in industry would be that in funding calls by soft funders like the European Commission or national funding calls, that they're co-funded and that they're 50% funded or a certain percentage by industry and the funding body, so that the written indent to the co-funded call would be a mandatory, again, a placement or time in industry. So the reason why I'm saying this is that researchers that do a PhD are very fond and like the research environment that a university provides, and they become used to it. So the thought of transitioning to industry becomes quite a challenge, and there's quite a lot of barriers or perceived sort of negativity from industry. So actual physical placements in an industry or a company will remove that perceived barrier, give them a taste of what industry is like, and then when it comes to that, they'll be more than conducive to thinking that a career in industry might be attractive. My final suggestion then is that even if you're in a classic funded call, hosted in a university, that there is sabbaticals, and sabbaticals will be mutually agreed between another host body, between another industry, perhaps another policy, or even in communities where there's, again, a 3 to 4 month placement. Again, this would give a diverse experience to the person. So they're my three is placements, co-funded projects, and sabbaticals.
Thank you, Gordon. And I move on to Lisa.
Thank you, Gareth. Well, first of all, I would like to say that I'm not only representing the University of Zurich here today, but the whole Lero network, in fact. And so I guess my main point would be that Lero universities are fully committed to promoting multiple career pathways. Because of course, universities are not only about papers and patents, but also and foremost people and talents. And I guess the most common approach for universities to help researchers in their career developments are things like career counseling services, mentoring, of course, and transferable skills trainings, particularly for PhD, but increasingly also for researchers in the postdoc phase. This is nothing new, really. Lower universities have been doing this for a while now, but of course, it is always necessary to improve and to adapt these measures to new realities. When we talk about equipping our early career researchers with a diverse set of skills, there is one dilemma maybe that I would like to emphasize, though. I think it is important to keep in mind that the early career stage is essentially about researchers specializing and gaining in-depth scientific expertise to be competitive in their respective fields. And so this might somehow then conflict with the idea that they need to acquire all kinds of skills for different work environments. I think we need to find a good balance here. This is important. We also need to make sure that we don't overburden, particularly our junior researchers. And also take into account the fact that people have different interests. They have different skills, maybe natural skills and abilities. And so as universities, we consider it important that the kinds of services that I just mentioned are offers. So offers that researchers can use to shape their different profiles according to individual needs. I think this is an important point. Another key point is maybe something that I think Gordon already touched on, or that goes in a similar direction. The fact that we don't only need to provide trainings, theoretical training, but also offer networks and environments where researchers can actually apply such transferable skills and put them into practice. So I guess for lower universities, they always have or always try to actively encourage research collaborations with non-academic partners, such as companies, governments, NGOs, stakeholder organizations, and not only for the sake of science, but especially also in this context to create opportunities for our early career researchers. At the University of Zurich, for example, we have been building up what we call the Innovation Hub, which is essentially a platform that on the one hand provides resources for innovation and entrepreneurship at the university, but also creates a dense network with economic actors in the Zurich area. So I think this is a good example. And finally, if I may make a final point, is that the promotion of multiple pathways in university also requires a cultural change, I think. Because researchers and particularly supervisors need to recognize that different activities and career choices that are not strictly within the confines of academic research are equally valuable. I think this is not yet the mindset that everyone has within universities. So this really is a cultural change, which is difficult to bring about, as cultural change always is. And I think universities, including mine, still have a long way to go here. But particularly the kind of research collaborations that we've been talking about before, they can help with this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I pass the floor to Maxime.
Thanks a lot, Gareth, and thanks for inviting us to be present in this debate. I'm Social Affairs Director in Business Europe, and as such, of course, I follow the skills agenda much more broadly than through the angle of researchers. And I perhaps would like to start with a few general remarks. The fact is that we are at a very interesting time because just now we have a strong focus on vocational education and training, and there is an upcoming initiative by the Commission at the end of this year, which will be a keystone to improve training provision across Europe. And I think within that framework, universities have a key role to play. So far, universities are essentially seen as initial education, and of course, research also takes place in universities. But I think that there is a weakness that needs to be improved, which is the lifelong learning element of universities. And they need to transform themselves. They need to adapt so that we are going to make it a strength in our adaptation to make the best of the digital and green transitions. And as you all know, we are just at the time of revisiting the industrial strategy. So I think a focus on innovation is really critical if we want to achieve our economic and social objectives. In this focus on innovation, of course, researchers, they have an important role to play. on that, the cooperation between public and private is very important. I mean, there is one issue, which is that business invests a lot in research and development. It's 66% of total R&D expenditures. And of course, we have, as professionals in the companies, the need to have really well-trained people that are going to be able to contribute to innovation of products and services. The researchers, what do they bring? They bring analytical skills, of course, strategic, systemic thinking, but also a sense of being able to understand problems and to have a new look at the problems so that the solutions are going to be effectively meeting the challenges. And that is, of course, very important that we improve business academia permeability in the future. And to do so, I think there is an element of facilitation, but there is also an element of mindset. For the researchers themselves, of course, business should be seen as an attractive opportunity for a career. And of course, there may be solutions to encourage people to do that. But it also has to do with the way in which universities more generally are open to work and cooperate with business. It has to do also with the education component. Because of course, if we want to succeed on research, we need also to have the right people being trained. And I think a key focus for us is really the knowledge triangle in Europe. Education, research, and business should go hand in hand. It is our future economic results that are in question, and we are very much looking forward to cooperating with all the actors involved.
Thanks, Maxime. So would it be fair to say then as well that seeing as many researchers are going into industry, that many companies or companies generally should be interacting with universities more also to make sure that the types of researchers and the skills that they have are delivering value for the companies they're going to go into? In other words, that there should be perhaps stronger communication between the two on this.
Well, I mean, for example, industrial PhDs are very important. They should be better promoted because they are really at the intersection between research and the company's needs. So that's very important. And also, I think we need to keep in mind that open science is a concept that is perhaps not the best suited in terms of the reality of the private sector. Companies are open to have their research people contributing in research publications, but at the same time, of course, if it would be a proxy for a career of researchers, it would not help for this permeability.
Yeah, and I think I'll come back to this open science point you've raised a little bit later. What I'd like to do before I go to the next question, I would like to see if we can pull up the results of the Slido poll. So that specifically asked about the skills that researchers need looking forward to future careers. So let's have a look at the word cloud here. So name 5 skills that researchers need in their future careers. I see coming out very strongly networking. So that's been obviously repeated by several speakers. Critical thinking, communication, communication skills, science communication. I see research integrity, data literacy, management skills, IT, knowledge dissemination, language skills, management skills, research skills, writing skills. So quite a collection of skills there, which brings me a little bit back to what Lisa said, that we shouldn't be getting them to do everything and should not be overburdening them. When I see a picture like this, it almost makes me nervous. So my second question then to the speakers is, from your perspective, what core skills and perhaps new emerging skills, taking developments, technological developments into account, will researchers need in or outside academia as we diversify more careers and as open science comes into play? So I'll repeat that. So which core skills and new emerging skills will researchers in or outside academia need in this shift towards diversification of research careers and open science? And I'll pass the floor directly to Gordon.
Thank you. I'll start off with core skills, and I'm going to do a sort of an unashamed plug for the 2 projects that I'm coordinator of in the area of responsible research and innovation, and they're called RING and GRIP, and they're so responsible research and innovation has 5 pillars of gender equality, open access, STEM, ethics and integrity, and then the hot one, which Europe loves, is public engagement, citizen engagement. So these are core skills that all researchers need to know of, and I think they're very nicely bundled and packaged together under the label of ORI. And these are core skills that researchers need to know and how to integrate into their research. The GRIP project is a practical application of implementing a change strategy or change management, an institutional change of 5 institutions to implement ORI principles in their governance framework. So in that word cloud then as well came a huge number of skills of all skills to do with projects, Horizon 2020 projects, and how to apply for projects. And in that you need those skills of budgeting, do budgets, how to do proposal writing, and a little bit of statistics. And then also, if you're successful and one of the lucky ones to get a Horizon 2020, you need to manage the project. So project management is crucial, and these are all skills that researchers just don't have. Then, if you're an individual researcher, science communication is crucial. But then, if you're part of a European project, then you could be part of the science communication work package and as a team. And finally, you've asked for new skills and emerging skills. Then the whole data sector is emerging, and how to manage data. Data management is, of course, flagged by the European Commission and calls all the time, and trying to make it important. But researchers still need to be told how to store their data, how to format their data, how to protect their data, and the ones which everyone hates is getting the consent and ethics of the data, and so these are all skills to be trained.
Thank you, Gordon. Lisa?
Well, I could agree with everything that Gordon said, but just to coming back to the essential, I think the most essential skills that a researcher needs and has always needed is analytical thinking. Maxime has also said it, and the ability to absorb lots of information in short time and to structure and present it coherently. I think these are, also, of course, competences that are valuable in any position that is demanding outside of academia. It's a really basic core. Now, you've asked about the open science movement. Of course, that brings along new requirements. There's a lot of emphasis on the technical skills, and I think Gordon has said it as well. And those are certainly important, but I would actually also like to draw attention to a different dimension, and that has come up in the cloud, in the word cloud, very prominently as well, and that is communication. I would fully agree with that this is becoming ever more important for researchers, the ability to collaborate and to communicate with a wide range of actors. We are in times that universities face increasing financial pressures, where we see this constant demand for impact, where we see a growing maybe public mistrust and disinformation, and this is why scientists need to engage with society, and they need to be able to explain to a diverse audiences what they are doing and why it is important. I think, if anything, the last year has shown this very clearly. So yes, I think communication skills are key. I would agree, and also when transitioning into other areas of employment. But maybe this is also me speaking as someone with a background in the social sciences and the career path that I've taken.
Thank you, Lisa. And Maxime, and also if you could link this question to what you mentioned about open science, that maybe not all aspects of open science and open science skills are relevant or could be relevant for industry.
Thanks a lot, Gareth. Well, first, I'd like to start with an understanding of the skills needs for researchers from the company's perspective. We did a survey in 2019 in Business Europe, and there it was very clear that access to skills is very important when companies decide where to invest in terms of future research and innovation investments. So, of course, this has to do as well with the researchers, and there is a key concern on the business side, which is the fact that this is a shortage occupation, so we don't have enough. And the mismatch has increased in recent periods. Since 2008, it's measured by an increase of 29%. So this is really something that needs to be addressed. And we put it essentially with a focus on STEM skills. Well, for us, scientific, technological, engineering, and mathematics skills are really at the core of what we need in order to make those transitions a success. And in order to do that, we have suggested to have by 2030 a new target that would increase the current level of 21% of STEM graduate in tertiary education to 25%. This is a significant increase, and this is very important to achieve it. In order to achieve it, I think it has to do with the gender dimension, because as you probably know, in terms of STEM, women, young girls are less choosing these fields of study and occupations, and that is very important that it is improving with more female participation. Going forward, I mean, in terms of the key skills needs, I think it is obviously the case that you need to have the capacity in people to understand all the complexity of issues. And from that perspective, a good initial education is very important. But you need also to have an understanding of the market dynamics. And I think this is where it's so important that in education itself from the start, that there is a kind of dualization of the training so that more researchers would be more connected to the company's realities at an early stage. And that, of course, then would be a way also of increasing the attractiveness of the research positions in the companies. Well, when it comes to open science, I agree with Lisa that it is very important that scientific knowledge and what is being developed by science is understood and communicated in the best possible way to society. Having said so, of course, the business is also about generating new ideas, products, services, and there is an element of competition in all this. So you need to preserve the market dynamics when it comes to business, and it means that it cannot be replicable in the same way as it is in the academic world. But also, I think the academic world needs to be better in terms of having, for example, for education, more of a learning outcomes approach. So less about the input in terms of number of hours you do in ECTS, but rather about the skills that are being trained through the education pathway. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxime. And one of the things I always note when I talk to researchers and I ask them, so what will you do if you leave academia and go to industry, go to the labor market? Very often they're not sure what positions that they could go to, and they're often not sure of their own skills. And that links in a way also to the skills that they feel they've learned themselves, maybe the learning outcomes, but also to the jobs they see as potential jobs, both inside academia and outside, that may not be directly focused on the research. So before I go to this third question, see if I can pull up the Slido poll again. Dario, please. And the question here was, name 5 occupations that future PhD holders could perform. So we kept it a bit broad here. And we see, of course, researcher. That's not surprising, that comes up. But this maybe links back, I think, a bit to what Lisa said about disinformation and communication. We see informing policymakers, scientific advice, scientific advocacy. So this comes out very, very strong here. And then we also see other more research project-related occupations like project management, consulting expert, consulting, entrepreneur. So even here looking at this, I still see a kind of restricted set of occupations for researchers when we look at the broad range of professions on the labor market. So this third question is, which core occupations and which new, possibly new emerging occupations, so thinking what Gordon said about, for instance, the data sector, in or outside academia, do you think will be attractive for PhD holders in the future? So I'll repeat that. Which core occupations and new emerging occupations in or outside academia will or could be attractive for PhD holders in the future? And I'll go back to Gordon.
Gareth, I took the interpretation of this question not just for a PhD holder just finishing their doctorate, going straight out into the new world. I took the interpretation of the question as of postdoc and then considering alternative careers. So from moving from staying within industry, if within academia, if they wanted to finish their research life and just wanted to diversify within academia, the whole, once you become sort of involved in collaborative projects and European projects, you become exposed then to the other jobs which are as exciting, perhaps as rewarding, like project management, project coordination. There's a whole skill set in grant writing, and then being familiar and an expert in finance and putting budgets together is a suite of skills. Then relating to the ring and grip projects and RRI, there is a new emerging from the grip project. We're recommending that all research institutions have an RRI coordinator or an RRI office. So people expert in RRI, the 5 pillars, can have an alternative career in that area. And finally, then within academia, there's this new skill set, of course, of being a data manager and an open access, open science manager. It sounds intuitive and easy, but it's not. You need to know exactly what open science means, access to be able to properly implement it. So then outside, then are the new exciting areas, as far as I'm concerned, are artificial intelligence, in industry, genetics, the bioeconomy, medical because of COVID, and then for my area, which is in renewables and sustainable and circular economy.
Thank you, Gordon. Lisa?
Well, in most general terms, I would say that any job that requires critical thinking and analytical skills and project management skills can be attractive for someone with a research background. And then I have the impression that when we talk about intersectoral mobility, it's often too narrowly conceived maybe as moving from academia to the industry. But linking back maybe to my response to the previous question, I think that the whole area of science communication research management is gaining ever more and more importance and creating a lot of or a great variety of interesting job opportunities for researchers. I think Gordon has mentioned them. When we talk about research management, we mean people in support structure helping researchers to submit proposals. It could be coordination of larger research programs. So any jobs where you still have a close connection to the academic research, but not doing research yourself, but actually just kind of, creating good conditions and helping and supporting it. Research can be something that is very interesting and very fulfilling for researchers as well. And then there's also maybe the more policy-oriented fields like work in governmental agencies or the nonprofit sectors, which I assume it was meant by, or partly also meant by what we had in the word cloud with science advocacy maybe and informing political decision makers. This is of course also something that researchers themselves can do. So these kind of areas I think are very interesting and increasingly important. And again, actually, maybe I'm also talking from my personal experience here as someone who moved after her PhD to a position in the Swiss Research Ministry, and then back to the University of Zurich into the central administration.
Thank you, Lisa and Maxime.
Thanks a lot, Gareth. Well, I think we're in very interesting times because the jobs are changing significantly. So it's a mix of new jobs being created and the existing jobs that are being impacted to a good extent by digital and greening transformations. And so, I mean, I think it would also probably reflect on what is available in terms of occupations for the researchers, particularly if we look at it together with innovation and when it comes to the applied realities in the companies. So, well, I think it is a time of change, and it's important to make good use of all the opportunities there are to have good information about the labor market trends. CEDEFOP, which is the EU agency dealing with vocational training, has developed a new tool that is called Skills Ovate. And this new tool allows to look at what are the new trends and new jobs and changing jobs, and what are the skills content that are relating to it. Of course, it's much broader than researchers, but I think it also is valuable information for researchers because it direct market, labor market perspective of what is being in demand. A second point is, of course, there are professions which are really in the rise, and I think it was already previously mentioned by Gordon, for example. I think big data is really something that is changing a lot. It is about data processing, it is about data management. Cybersecurity is also an area where a lot is being built up. So it probably also reflects in terms of the research needs. And of course, the whole greening chapter is very important. We can see that going forward towards net zero emissions requires a lot of innovation. And of course, the technologies that are being tested now and their contribution is going to be essential in reducing and going to net zero emissions. So I think it is really an area where there will be a need for stronger research input to the process to succeed in this transition. And last but not least, perhaps to also highlight that the PhDs that I just mentioned that are really connected to the industrial realities are probably going to be leading to different and very interesting and challenging occupations in the process of innovation in the companies. We need to have this right. I think complexity is also the fact that those skills needs are being a bit transversal at the same time. You need to have the core technical skills of a particular area, but usually, you know, you would be trained in a certain way. And now I think we need to be adapting a bit to this disruption that is happening. IT skills are necessary at all levels. And I think it is very important to also reflect that in the research professions.
Thank you, Maxime. I see we're getting lots of questions in the chat, so I'm going to jump straight to audience questions. I'm going to ask all of you to keep your answers short. I'm going to try and get through as many as I can, and I'm going to direct them to one of you specifically. So, Gordon, I have a question here related to precarity. I still find it unacceptable that there's variety across the EU. As a postdoc, you have less stability in terms of contract, salary, and recognition compared to PhD candidates, for instance. Do you want to comment on that? So this is about precarity for postdocs.
I think there's two questions there. Certainly, there is a. Yeah, I suppose I haven't really introduced myself. I'm one of the directors of the International Consortium of Research Staff Associations. We're a global umbrella organization that looks after that has a mission to advance the careers of researchers, to make the career of a researcher more sustainable and attractive as a lifelong career. And a lifelong career that can be in academia as well as in industry and switching back and forth, but to make it viable and to make it a happy career, because careers of researchers are very unstable, very precarious and very stressful, and don't seem to be getting any better, if not getting worse. So the new word about precarity stems from the fact that all researchers, almost all, are on short-term contracts, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year contracts. Open-ended contracts could be seen as a solution to them, but as been explained to me recently, open-ended contracts make you ineligible for contract of indefinite duration. So there's a whole suite of barriers for researchers that have a lifelong precarious career, whereas the kind of classic academic in a university with a permanent job has stability, can get a mortgage, can have a family. So the question here is there is a variety of precarity situations across Europe, with some countries like the UK, which has mandatory or open-ended contracts, which gives a certain amount of stability, to the situation in Ireland, which is the other end of the extreme, where our researchers are treated as trainees and have got no rights as researchers for a long-term career, to Germany, which is offering tenure track positions for senior researchers, so they actually have a career path. So it would be great that Europe has a long time ago developed a European career framework for research careers, developed 15 years ago, but it's only a recommendation. It's not implemented. It's not uniform across the European Union, and it would be great if with the EC under the Office of Slavin, and I know Gareth, involved with Eurodoc, are promoting and trying to advance this, but there's a huge opposition from the vested interests of academia and to a lesser extent industry to advance and make careers of researchers more attractive. Because let's face it, a highly not mobile, but a highly versatile short-term nature of a contract is very attractive for industry and universities. Why change it?
And Maxime, I see several questions coming in here, but one of them I want to just pull up directly relates to industrial PhDs. It says that industry is not interested in scientific publications, but these can be a requirement for obtaining the PhD title. So how do you support industrial PhD candidates? If you can keep the answer a bit short, because I want to get one or two more in as well.
Well, I mean, perhaps a quick word first to say that we are also at critical times because it's recovery now. And in this recovery, of course, the member states are working on their national recovery and resilience plans. And we think it's very important that there is more focus on what will make our future competitiveness. And this has to do with innovation and research as well. So that was part of our assessment that more is needed in that area. Of course, it has to do as well with the opportunities that are there, because when you invest more in these areas, there would be more opportunities created. And the project nature of research also makes it relating to the length of what is being offered. And the labor market is a labor market. So there is demand, there is offer, and it is, of course, up also to the researchers themselves to really have good information and choose where is their specialization. When it comes to the industrial PhDs, I think, as I said, companies are usually open to their people publishing in the research publications. But of course, this is not necessarily connected to what exactly is being done in the company itself. So I think it is about finding the right balance, and the people who are interested in industrial PhDs, of course, they need also to be able to meet the requirements for it.
Thank you, Maxime. And Lisa, you mentioned the social sciences and humanities, so I'm going to merge two comments here for you. One of them was the majority of the discussion focuses on scientific PhDs, but half of PhDs are non-STEM and face the same issues. And then the second point was, don't you think that humanist and social sciences can be of value for business? So what's your impression there on the social sciences and humanities moving out of academia into industry and the relevance of this?
Well, of course, I mean, industry is not only about like pharmaceutical companies or tech companies. There's a lot of, in the service sector, there's a lot of new businesses that requires knowledge and expertise that's coming out of the social sciences and the humanities. So I don't see necessarily a contradiction here. I think it's really, we have to broaden our view on what we think, the business areas or the employment areas that are interesting for researchers. It's not all just, as I said, tech companies and yeah. So I think that's. Oops.
Thanks, Lisa. Maxime, there's a very practical question here. Could you repeat the name of the tool you spoke about related to skills?
So it's called Skills Ovate, Ovate, O-V-A-T-E. And this is CEDEFOP.
Thank you. Could you repeat that just once more for everybody so they get it?
Yes, of course. Skills Ovate, Ovate, O-V-A-T-E. And this is done by CEDEFOP, the EU agency in the field of education and training.
Thank you. Lots of questions. I'm afraid we're not going to get to them all, but thank you for everybody for asking them. What I'd like to do as we wrap up here is just ask each of our speakers to give a short closing statement. So what do you want the take-home message to be here for the research support staff and the researchers that are listening in? Gordon.
Okay, well, it relates to one of the questions that came through there. There is an overproduction of PhDs. There's a drive by all countries to increase their what's called research performance, and the indicator is the number of PhDs. And so they're just pumping them out with no plan for what they're going to do for them, and they're just short term, and then they end up not fulfilling their research destiny And so if there was a reduction in number of PhDs, so that it would provide a better quality career path and career sustainability. But then for those that do still, have there should be alternatives of attractive industry careers that in research. So you're not going into the classic, so it'd be industry PhDs or industry training, so that people sort of steer away from academia where there is no long-term viable career path at the moment. And yeah, that'd be my.
Thanks, Gordon. Lisa?
Well, to sum up a bit the points that I was trying to convey is that, first of all, their universities have been putting much effort into preparing their researchers for multiple career paths and offering them various opportunities. But of course, there is still room for improvement. We need to find good balances. That's what I was mentioning before. And we need to change mindsets along with the research context that are constantly evolving and new practices that are coming up. I think that would be my take home.
Change the mindset, change the culture. I think that's what you said earlier as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lisa. And Maxime?
Well, I will conclude with what I said at the start. I think we are in a time when the economies are changing very rapidly, and universities need to change with it so that they are going to play a better role to match labor market needs. And this is exciting as well, because it is a deep change of what is expected from universities. And I think we need really to create the European way of matching better what is coming from academia and what is coming from business, and address where there may be still some misconceptions or misunderstandings, and work together as partners. This is how we are going to succeed. Thank you.
So Gordon, Lisa, Maxime, thanks a lot for your contributions, for answering all the questions. Also, thanks to everybody listening in and asking all of those questions. And I think I'd like to wish everybody a nice day and a wonderful remaining R&I Days 2021, and to catch the sessions later on today. So thanks again to our speakers, Gordon, Lisa, Maxime, and we hope to see you again soon in the future.